Talk about low-budget flights. No food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So before we get into today's topic, I'd like to remind you all about my 100 subscriber goal by June 11th. We're very close. I have 92 now, and I think I can make it. So, and I'd like to remind you all to check out my How to Train Your Dragon 3 review, and my Ninjago videos have been doing incredibly well. The first two are the long form Ninjago videos I didn't do very well, but the characters analysis ones I've done were done astonishingly well. Thank you so much for that. But today I'm returning to the world of DreamWorks animation. I review one of their all-time best, one of the greatest movies of all time, in my opinion, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Everybody's talked about this movie. It was so big for a long time. But every now and then you'll still see someone cover it, or people will still mention it because it was such a monumental film. And it's totally deserving of all the praise that's been heaped on it over the past year and a half, I'd say. So now, time for me to get into Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Without further ado, let's do it to it. So before I talk about Kitty and Death and Jack Horner and all those other characters in the animation, I think I'd rather talk about Kitty and Perito first. They're really good here. We'll start with Perito. Yeah, everybody said how they all expected him to be annoying, and then he ended up being really funny and actually pretty important to the plot too. And yeah, that's all I have to say about him. I mean, he has a lot of great lines. Stuff like I always like his one emotional scene toward the end where Puss is about to make the wish to get his 9 lives back, and he says, "Well, one life is all I've ever really needed, and haven't you stopped to consider that maybe one life is enough?" And yeah, that causes Puss's epiphany. He might have actually just used the wish on the star, if not for Perito's words here, which I've never heard anybody mention before. They always mention stuff like how he mentioned he wanted to be a therapy dog, and then when Puss is having a panic attack, he just does what a therapy dog does and doesn't say, "Hey, I'm a real therapy dog now." Nope, this movie shows instead of tells. I also like his voice too. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the guy who played him. It's Harvey Gulen or something like that, but he did a really good job here. I also like Kitty Softpaws a lot. I was expecting her to be kind of annoying, but nope, she wasn't. She was pretty entertaining and definitely fit the story well. I was not expecting the story with her to go the way it did about how Puss dumped her at the altar years ago, and that's why they hate each other now so much. I like that plot point a lot. Also, apparently she sounds way different here than she did in the first Puss in Boots movie, but I haven't seen it, so I don't really care. I think this is a reference to the first Puss in Boots movie where she and Puss do they're all falling through the air and they start hitting their boots together and it propels them upward or something like that. And of course, she gives Puss the blade that he ends up using in his battle with Death at the end of the movie, which is really good. Nice little detail. I just like her arc of learning to trust people. Like how she thinks that Perito is just too nice. Nobody's that nice. But nope, he really is. And she accepts that. She trusts Puss again. Of course, she gets the line of, "That is the saddest thing I've ever heard. If anyone's getting a wish, it should be you." And Perito says, "Well, I don't need a wish. I've um I've got two best friends, no magic required." And of course she doesn't really take this to heart until later, but it's done very well, very naturally. I appreciate that. Then there's Jack Horner. You know, we didn't have much before Jack Horner existed when it comes to animated movie villains. Just a bunch of classic ones over and over again for years and years. Useless things like that. And then we lost them all because of Disney. But then we got Jack Horner in this movie, which he is of course an allegory for Disney, and it's just a great villain because he is a villain. He's not a twist villain, he's not sympathetic. He's just a purely evil guy that is greedy and selfish and mean, yet he's also really funny. This is especially thanks to John Mulaney's performance. He was really good here. I don't know who that is, obviously, but he did a really good job. My favorite line from him is probably the "You wouldn't shoot a puppy in the face." Yeah, why? Yeah, that reminds me of the cricket here too. Since I'm such a big fan of Jimmy Stewart, I find it really funny that, well, one, this is a parody of Jiminy Cricket. He's the conscience for a guy that pretty much has no conscience, and he sounds like Jimmy Stewart, which is just hilarious. And Jack doesn't even swat him away or anything. He just keeps him around, and the cricket sees how evil Jack is, and then he only finally realizes that you're horrible. You're an irredeemable monster. Oh, what took you so long, idiot? I also like Jack's death scene. He gets stabbed in both of his gigantic thumbs once he grows huge by Kitty and Puss. And then when he does a thumbs down as he falls into the ground, obviously a reference to the Arnold Schwarzenegger thumbs up in Terminator 2 is really funny. And he says, "What did I do to deserve this? I mean, what specifically?" That's another thing about his character. He's just so unabashedly evil and he just revels in it. He knows that he's mean and he's a jerk, but he doesn't care. Because he just wants all the magic in the world for his wish and to control everyone and everything. Because his motivation, if you can even really call it that, is just that he doesn't like being made fun of. Because he's not even from a obscure fairy tale. He's from an obscure nursery rhyme. He's such a nobody. The only bit of backstory we get for him is him reciting his nursery rhyme when he was a kid and nobody watching. Well, everybody next door is watching the dancing puppet Pinocchio. And he says, "So what's the big deal? He wants to be a real boy? I've been a real boy the whole time." Great, just great villain. Also, it's interesting to note that the trailers didn't really show him at all. He was pretty much just hidden from all the marketing. I guess they just wanted to save the greatness that is Jack Horner. Then, of course, there's the main character of this movie, Puss in Boots, and Death. I was definitely not expecting Death to be in this movie. When I first saw this wolf bounty hunter guy, yeah, I just thought he was that, some super scary, powerful wolf bounty hunter. Even though it's pretty obvious in hindsight that he's Death, a lot of people just guess that. Everybody can agree, even if you did see it coming, that the reveal of it is just great. I also like here how the only other time I've seen Death as a character in a movie was in Bill and Ted, which, you know, he's comic relief there, and he's really funny in those movies. But also there, he's just dressed as the Grim Reaper. He's just a guy with white skin, like a skeleton and black hood. Here, Death is still a guy in a black hood, but because this is it's in the Shrek universe, so it's a fairy sort of like a fairy tale. He's a huge wolf. Except now he has creepy red eyes and this accent, and he's unsettling. My heart was pounding during the climax of this movie. Especially just the opening when Puss is told after getting down to his last life he can't go around adventuring anymore because he's getting too arrogant and cocky. He keeps dying over and over again. Not because of some epic adventure or anything, but he dies because he ate too much shellfish and he was allergic to it, I suppose. Or he was cheating while playing poker with dogs, or he just got drunk off of milk and fell off a building. And yeah, we all point out stuff like how right as Death's about to show up, he's at a bar and drinking milk, and he has 8 cups down that he's already finished, and he's drinking his ninth, and then Death shows up. And that's a really good detail, or stuff like how Death is in the crowd watching Puss right before he gets crushed by the bell and dies. I mean, most movies wouldn't put in a detail like that, or how in the title card, or for the number it shows for each of his deaths, in the corner you can see a vague picture of the wolf's face. That's an even more obscure detail I've only ever seen one person point out before. The fact that they put that much detail into this is astonishing. I mean, this is just the sequel to a movie from 11 years before that nobody ever talks about, except to say that it was boring and forgettable. So yeah, I really like what they did with Death here. And he's I mean, yeah, it's definitely the scariest villain I've ever seen in a movie, outside of Nazis, I suppose. But I mean, there you all know they're gonna get die some graphic death in Indiana Jones or something, or they're gonna get beat up. But here, this is unsettling. And his motivation does make sense. He's not portrayed as sympathetic because how do you, I mean, because Death is not good or evil. But Death here as a character is definitely a villain. He's not just an antagonist because he's not just saying to Puss, "You're gonna die soon, so I'm just here to pick your last life up." He's just telling him that I find 9 lives absurd, and you didn't value any of them. So I'm just going to take the last one now. I also like when he speaks Spanish because I don't know Spanish. It just makes him seem even creepier with that accent. Especially since, yeah, I don't know what it means. So it just makes me think, what is he saying? And yeah, I didn't really mention Puss, even though he's in this chapter of the video. But yeah, Puss is really good here. I like him in Shrek too. I haven't seen Shrek 3 or 4. I'm going to see Shrek 4, but I've never seen the original Puss in Boots movie. So this is most of my exposure to this character is from this movie. It's been a long time since I saw Shrek 2, so to me this is just how Puss in Boots is, and he's great here. I definitely like his design because I like the whole art style of this movie a lot more than the Shrek movies. Those look good for what they were, but Puss looks a lot better in this style. He's more cartoony, less realistic looking. Because of also the great animation, art direction, and just the style in general, he just pops through different scenes, like when he chugs the coffee that he takes from some guy and his eyes bulge and then he starts running like crazy. Well, really well done. I also like how they made Death, yeah, a character here for as the villain that constantly chases Puss. Because it could have just been, okay, there's Goldilocks and the Three Bears crime family and Jack Horner is the villain. That would have been fine. I'm sure the movie would have still been really good. It could have just been about Puss's fear of death. But no, they made Death an actual character, and he is very scary. And so that's part of the reason why it's so satisfying to see Puss finally win at the end. Except Puss, as he says, I know I cannot defeat you, Lobo, but I will never stop fighting for this life. Because he knows he can't beat or cheat Death. You can only, and since Death was just here to claim him early, all he does is just give up trying to kill Puss. He says, you and I will see each other again. And Puss says something in Spanish, which I guess is supposed to mean, I know. And Puss completes his character arc there too. He's learned that one life is enough. And I think, well, one, it's pretty funny that they went with the actual myth that cats have 9 lives and made it the whole driving force of the beginning of the movie here. How, yeah, he's down to the last of his 9 lives. And that he never really considered what having just one life means. As Death says, I came here for an arrogant little legend who thought he was immortal. I mean, I don't mind the blood in that one scene with Puss when he finally gets touched by a blade. I don't like the 3 swear words that are in this movie, but the first Shrek had swears in it, so I guess it's not as bad. But I don't mind the blood in that one scene at all. I mean, it's not super graphic or anything, and it really does set up the tone for these scenes with death, because most of this movie, for all its mature themes, because it is very mature, it's well serious too, but this movie is just really funny too, and it's exciting, and it has a lot of bright colors. But it never gets too bright or too serious. It's the perfect balance, which is really appreciated. I just also one quick side note: just Puss doesn't really wear the cape in any of the Shrek movies that much. So I like that he has a cape for pretty much the entirety of this movie. Or I find all the jokes when he has that beard because he couldn't shave when he was living as a house cat really funny. How he says it's distinguished, and I was wondering, is Puss just gonna keep the beard until the very end? But no, he shaves it. He gets it shaved off during the second act, so that's fine. I also like how he loses his sword and doesn't get it back until the end because Death, because Death gives Puss the sword, which he dropped during his first encounter with him earlier in the movie. That means Death just picked up Puss's sword and held onto it for the entirety of the movie until he finally came face to face with him once again. That's a really nice detail. And also, apparently, Puss is quoting Errol Flynn when he says, "Pick it up." I like Errol Flynn. I like how Puss is sort of a Robin Hood, but talking cat guy. Or I guess he's based on Zorro, who Puss's voice actor Antonio Banderas also played. Which when is Antonio Banderas ever going to win an award for his performance as Puss in Boots? Considering how loved this movie was, I think it only won one single Annie Award, which is for its editing. which is ridiculous. It should have won Best Animated Movie because I actually like the Annies. They're not as stupid as the Oscars. And speaking of the Oscars, I guess I sort of already went on this rant during my Best Animated Feature video, but if it were up to me, this would have won. This would have been one of the only movies in history to win 11 Oscars at once. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. There aren't really that many great movies that come out these days. So when you get one like this, one that's as good as this, that's really impressive. That says something. I don't think I have anything more to add about Puss. He's just really funny. Oh yeah, I like his dynamic with Kitty a lot, which I kind of already mentioned, but I was genuinely surprised during that whole plot point where he revealed that he was going to marry her and then he just dumped her at the altar because he was too afraid of letting go of his life as a fearless hero, a legend. And as he learns that by the end, he may not be a fearless hero anymore, but he's a brave hero now. Before, he was, despite being called a fearless hero, he was afraid. He was afraid of death. He was afraid of marriage. He was afraid of taking things at a slower pace. But by the end, he's finally able to face death himself right then and there and tell him his famous line, "Fear me if you dare." Then I gotta mention the music. Since this movie was not composed by Hans Zimmer and/or John Powell, it's not nearly as memorable as other DreamWorks soundtracks. I mean, we only really remember the Fearless Hero song and, of course, the Death Whistle, but hey, the music for the rest of the movie does fit really well. And yeah, the Death Whistle, it's iconic, it's great. And I just love the Fearless Hero song. It joins the ranks of Where No One Goes, Kung Fu Fighting, and, uh, what's. I don't really know what the theme song for Shrek is specifically. I guess it could be the. Hmm. I don't know. Somebody once told me maybe I'm a believer. But the point is, that could be a whole video in and of itself, which I'm not gonna make. That would be really short. But it joins the pantheon of DreamWorks vocal songs about each franchise because all their best franchises have some kind of vocal song and then some kind of just regular theme song. And this is definitely one of my favorites. I'd say it's better than the theme of Shrek, although, yeah, I'd say that Kung Fu Fighting and Where No One Goes especially are better. Then there's, of course, the animation, which laughs in the face of Disney. As I've heard this before, and it's true. You look at a lot of Disney and Pixar movies these days, but for years now, or you look at Illumination. The company like Illumination, they just copied the look of super popular Pixar movies, which sure were new at the time, but as these movies went on, they all just started to look the same. And even if they were good, it doesn't change the fact that they looked similar. For all of the even DreamWorks' worst movies, I can at least say they have a unique visual style, and this is one of their best. And this has a really unique visual style. Yes, it's based off Into the Spider-Verse, which everybody wants to copy these days, and I don't like Into the Spider-Verse very much, but I can say that the visuals are really good. And I'd say that this looks even better because it's a movie I actually care about. So even though as much as I love the comic booky bits in Into the Spider-Verse, I prefer the look of this. Especially with the textures on the character designs, the way everything looks, it's all really impressive. If we get that Shrek 5, which we probably will, which, to be honest, I don't really want a Shrek 5. I mean, Shrek's story was wrapped up pretty well in Shrek 4, from what I've heard, and where do you take it from there? I mean, where do you take? You can't make a Puss in Boots 3 either, because what would you do with Puss's character? His character arc is over. He's gone to the last of his 9 lives, and he accepted that. He faced death himself. He was around for this whole Jack Corner, Goldilocks and Three Bears adventure. What more do you do with this character? I think that, well, I do like the final scene of this movie with the, we're off to see some old friends. He and Team Friendship sail to far, far away. I'm glad that scene was kept in the movie, but I just don't think we need another one of these movies. And that's all I gotta say about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I guess then that bit about that spiel about Shrek 5 and Puss in Boots 3 could have been for the conclusion, but whatever. Point is, this movie is one of film's greatest achievements, for all the reasons I have stated during this video. The voice acting is great, which I only mentioned briefly, but yeah, Antonio Banderas as Puss, Salma Hayek as Kitty was really good, Harvey something as Perito, Wagner Moore as Death, John Mulaney as Jack Horner, or I didn't mention Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but because I didn't really have much to say about them, but they were really good too. especially their vocal performances were pretty well done as well. The visuals are great. The music is good. This movie is pretty much just perfect. I mean, I don't really have any flaws with it. And it's not like the Mario movie where I just thought, it's a good movie. I don't have any problems with it. Doesn't mean I think it's amazing though, because that's all I would say about the Mario movie. It was perfect for what it was trying to do, and I don't have any issues with it, but it doesn't mean it was amazing. But this movie, no, this movie really was just amazing. I was expecting a movie that would be very good, instead I got a masterpiece. And that just this movie contributes to the reason why DreamWorks is my favorite animated movie studio. For every Shark Tale, there's a Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. For every Trolls, there's a Kung Fu Panda or How to Train Your Dragon. Here's to hoping that whenever we get Shrek 5, it'll be good, and hopefully the wild robot looks really good. I'm excited for that. I'm not going to give up on DreamWorks, and this movie showed that even after all of their failures, they're still able to make something great. Comment down below if you think this was one of film's greatest achievements or not, or at least one of animation's greatest achievements anyway, or the best movie of the decade, because duh, it is. That's all for now, and as always, keep on juicing!